Hello and welcome to Lazy Reviews. My name is Arvid, and I do watch a lot of movies, and some are good, some are terrible, and today's gonna be a mixed bag because I'm going to talk about the Scary Movie franchise. And today's going to be quite a different episode because I'm going to talk about the Scary Movie franchise. These films are all parodying existing movies, and they're really just focused on giving you as many jokes and gags as possible without really focusing on any plot development or anything. And given that they're already parodying existing movies, there should be no spoiler warning here, because if you've seen those movies, you probably already know how this will end or have a very, very good idea on how this will end. And if you haven't, there's no reason really to watch the Scary Movie franchise because they're not really that good on their own. And they're really still not that good when you do know which movies they are parodying in each scene. And because of this premise, because of these movies being parody movies, being spoofs, I will be reviewing them very differently than I'm used to. I will very briefly sum up each movie's plot, just to get that out of the way. I will also talk about which main intellectual properties, generally it's just movies, but main intellectual properties that these are spoofing, so you have an idea if this might catch your interest or not. I'll also tell you my level of enjoyment with each movie, how many jokes landed and how many didn't. And if a joke did make me laugh out loud, it happened a few times, I will also be bringing that up so you can maybe find a clip of that online instead of having to watch a whole movie just for a few gags. So Scary Movie 1, or just Scary Movie, came out in 2000. And this is probably the most interesting of the scary movies in that its main point of inspiration, the main movie it's spoofing, is Scream. Scream itself was a horror movie parody or spoof horror in the sense that it really took the slasher genre and just took all the premises and commented on it, and it became very meta. And the reason why I'm actually making a review video about a Scary Movie is that I just made a review of the Scream franchise, so I thought it would be the natural next step to see what happens when you take the concept of a horror spoof and dial up to 11. Because this is a horror spoof dialed up to 11. So yes, the movie is parodying Scream mainly, also elements of Scream 2. This came out the same year as Scream 3, so Scream 3 is not being commented on in this film. It's also another major plot point, or several major plot points are taken from I Know What You Did Last Summer, another small horror movie franchise. And it's also doing a small bit taken from Blair Witch Project, a bit taken from The Matrix, because if you came out after The Matrix, you did all movies, it seemed like all movies, just especially comedies, took and copy-pasted scenes directly from The Matrix, and it's frustrating. All these movies are aged so horribly in hindsight. For example, if Kung Pao, I love that film, the worst sequence in that film is where they spoof The Matrix. It doesn't work well. Oh, and finally, it also has elements of The Usual Suspects. Plot-wise, you're following this lead character who gets this call, what is your favorite scary movie call that is taken directly from Scream. She is in this group of friends. They're taking a lot of scenes directly out from Scream, where they're establishing this group of friends. Again, this very Beverly Hills 902.0, whatever it's called. They even have, and I actually like that joke, they do have a scene where a guy crawls up the ladder and looks inside the window to our lead characters, and he says, "Oh, wrong set." And I'm quite sure that character is from Beverly Hills. So I did like that joke. That was a decent joke. We're not really talking about jokes already, but I just realized now that I can't really bring this point up without having to go all the way with it. And yeah, this group of friends, the last Halloween, not the last summer, but the last Halloween, they accidentally killed someone. And that's the plot taken from I Know What You Did Last Summer. And they're being stalked and killed one by one. It's all about finding the killer or the killers. That's it. That's the plot. That's why I'm saying that there's not much plot to talk about, because it's such a simple premise. And it's all down to how solid are the jokes, how well did the jokes age, and so on. So I'll just quickly bring up some of my favorite jokes. I think the opening actually starts with some quite solid jokes. It takes a lot from the opening scene from Scream. So in Scream, this creepy caller asks the girl, "What's your name? I want to know who I'm looking at." And then when it cuts to the point of view of the killer, he's actually looking at a porn mag. I thought that was a good joke. There's also a point where he stabs this woman. I think she's played by Carmen Electra. So he stabs her in the breast, but she doesn't die because all he does is penetrate the silicone and tear out this silicone implant. And that's, of course, disgusting, but there's something funny about it. There's also a joke that I kind of liked where the dad turns out to be a drug dealer and has this charming moment with the daughter talking about being a drug dealer and everything. I know that's not the best. A lot of these jokes only made me smirk, I think. Here are the jokes that actually really made me laugh. So the sheriff in the movie is played by Kurt Fuller. He's definitely one of my favorite side characters, and there are just a lot of good jokes with him. One of them is where he's the sheriff, so they are trying to track down the killer. He shows the lead some pictures and says, "I want you to take a good look at this and tell me what you think." And it's just him in a bikini or whatever, and just posing. I don't know, those things are really funny when, at least they're funny to me. A lot of these jokes I was angry with myself for finding this funny because it's so lowbrow. This is pretty much the easiest of comedy there is. Spoof comedy itself is a very cheap way of making comedy. You can do it very well. I'm not saying it's necessarily easy to make, but it does feel like it's on a very cheap level compared to if you have to make your own ideas, rather than just take a concept and then twist it a little bit, and then to make it more funny or to make it stupid, take something serious and make it stupid, you know? Kind of simple concept, not necessarily that difficult, especially not when almost all your jokes are homosexuality jokes or sex jokes or fart jokes. A lot of these jokes are really low quality, and I'm kind of sad that they still work, but it's also, I guess, that's some of this is, you can talk about things that age well and things that don't age well, and then there's just humor that will maybe always be funny, and that a really, really good fart joke might always be funny. It might be funny in 100 years from now on. So that these things are just hold up in ways where you can be ashamed of it. And that is a very long explanation from what I'm trying to say here. There's another scene that I kind of liked, again, because of the sheer stupidity of it, where someone is being chased up a staircase and she keeps finding things on the staircase to throw the killer. There is also a joke on racism. There are a lot of jokes about racism in this, or comments about racism, and this woman being hunted, she just has to write to the police, "White woman in trouble," and all the police show up a second later, and I don't know, that was a decent joke. Then there is also a character called Miss Man, who is the physical education teacher at the high school, and it's obvious that it's just a man in women's clothing who's just being a creep and trying to hook up with all these girls, have them tell naughty things about themselves. And I wouldn't say this is a transphobic joke, because this is obviously just a guy dressing up as a woman. It's not making a criticism about transvestites being perverts. It's just, this guy's a pervert. I can see how you could twist and turn it to be transphobic. I think you can see it also without having that lens. So, I don't know, if you're offended by this joke as transvestite or transsexual, I can understand it, but I also think that it could just be seen as a creepy guy exploiting situation. And there are a lot of gay jokes in this, and I think that generally they are not funny, because a lot of the gay jokes is just that this guy hasn't come out of the closet and doesn't want to come out of the closet, but he keeps wanting his girlfriend to dress up as a man. He keeps talking about spending time with men. He keeps doing all these stereotypically gay things, but he doesn't want to admit that he is gay. And I would say that they really fall flat. It's more gay jokes for the joke of someone is in the closet. And that's not funny, at least not anymore. Maybe it was back then to some people. But the first joke related to this is funny, because it just becomes so oversaturated. But the first one is, he asks his friend, "Does this shirt make me look gay?" And when his friend says no, he then flips it and to make some things with it, so it actually does look very stereotypically gay. And I laughed at that. I think that is a funny scene. I'll put up a picture of it, because I did find this funny the way it was delivered. So again, the comedy that does work in this movie is lowbrow comedy, and I guess it shouldn't work, but for me, it sometimes did. But of course, there were a lot of jokes that didn't land. They do a lot of things to excess, but not in a very creative or funny way. Just people repeatedly getting hit, or just so many jokes about sex, and again, so many gay jokes, way too many weed jokes. Honestly, I really get tired of this. I don't know. I remember this movie came out when weed was like at the pinnacle of weed comedies. And in hindsight, I hate it. I really think these jokes aren't funny. But I should also mention that I was a kid when this came out. And the 3 first Scary movies, I love them. I love them to death. I watched them all the time. I thought they were hilarious. And I wouldn't say it's funny on its own, but there is a parody on that Super Bowl ad, or no, is it Budweiser, I think? The "What's up" ad. Where yes, people calling each other and just say "What's up" to each other while watching the game and drinking a beer. And I think I'm not alone in this. I think a lot of Europeans, not knowing where this ad came from, thought it came from this movie. So I would walk around with my friends quoting this all the time. Every time I could as a kid say this "What's up" thing, I did. I think I even sometimes rang random doorbells and said it and hoped people would say it back. I was a dork. I still am, but especially back then, I was a real dork. And thinking back, there are so many things from these movies, so much comedy in these movies that I tried to replicate and realize that I was constantly quoting. And I don't think I was alone in this. I just think these movies had a huge impact on my childhood and on my generation. And it's always fine when jokes are funny for kids and not for adults, or when things just don't age well. And I think that's what the case is with this movie, because I remember it as being much more funny than I find it to be, but also don't think it's terrible. And I do think that that's actually all I have to say about the first one. Well, what I just said actually could be relevant for the 3 first movies, but I already brought up my main points, that the first movie has a few gags that actually work, a few jokes that land, but also a lot that doesn't. And I don't think there's a reason to really watch it. I think if you have fond memories of it, you can rewatch it and maybe see if it's still funny to you, because it's really not bad. I was surprised at how decent it is. It's not fantastic, but it is decent. And I would say it has enough decent moments for me it's more difficult to handpick what you should try and look up online. It will be more easy with other movies, but the jokes are more scattered around, and it kind of works. Kind of. A very, very, very minor recommendation I think I can give this. But only if you are already down with really stupid lowbrow comedy. If you really like lowbrow comedy, you might like this. So Scary Movie 2 from 2001. This film parodies The Exorcist, Final Destination, Scream 2, Poltergeist, The Haunting, Hannibal, and Charlie's Angels. At least those are the ones I could find. It also parodies a few TV ads, just as the previous one did. So in this one, our lead characters, many of whom are the same from the previous movie, whether they survived or not. This movie doesn't really care about continuity at all. And this group of college students are lured by their professor to go to this haunted house where strange things are happening. As I said, it's haunted. And the reason why they're taken to that haunted house is because they're running some experiments on the children, on ghost hunting, on recording these phenomena, and also want to see what happens if they can get the college students possessed and everything. It's doesn't matter. Honestly, it doesn't matter. The plot doesn't matter. So again, first the positives. I think it starts out very strong. Most of the opening where the parody The Exorcist is quite hilarious. It has a lot of Catholic priest pedophile jokes. You will find actually them in a lot of these movies. They're not always that funny, but in this one they kind of work. For example, when the little girl who's possessed screams, F me, it cuts to the priest actually laying on top of her. which I think is it's a funny take on the original film, kinda. Again, it's really stupid, but it's just played so well. Also, there's a good toilet scene here where it looks like the priest is preparing to exorcise the child, but actually he's just taking a huge dump. And again, it's fart humor, but it's good fart humor. He's being covered by these flies. Again, it does a good job at parodying The Exorcist. And there's also, I think, one of the more famous scenes from this film is the throw-up scene where they keep throwing up at each other. And I think I can already recommend you to just look up a clip of this opening, because the opening is quite good. If you do like the opening, you can maybe watch the whole thing, but we'll get to that later. It also has Tim Curry in it. Sadly, he is incredibly underutilized. He really doesn't have much to do in this movie, and it actually made me more angry that he's in it because he's just not doing anything in it, really. He's not even really being Tim Curry. So yeah, that saddened me a bit. There is another good gay joke in it as well. The same gay character as the first one, or closeted gay character. You see his face asking his college friends, so tucked in or out? And you just hear his friends say, out, out, out. And then you cut to the guy, and you see that what he means is that he has taken his pants and underwear off, and is standing with his penis and balls tucked between his legs as if pretending to be a woman. And it's just hilarious that he would do. Again, this is one of those things that it also works as a physical gag, and the way it's cut, the way it's filmed. But it's also something that, for me, just was a really funny idea, that this guy was standing in front of all his straight friends doing that thing. I think that was a funny scene. Unfortunately, the rest of the scene is quite unfunny. They do more gay jokes, and they're not really that funny. Maybe even the first half of the movie is fairly entertaining. And it has this one recurring gag where this guy who's playing the butler, who has one normal hand, that is his weak hand, and then his strong hand, the one he wants to do everything with, is this really deformed hand. And it grosses everyone out. And there are just so many good scenes where they just take it to the extreme, and that's why it's funny. When you first see it, I thought this was terrible, that this would not be funny. But because things are often funny when they're done to excess, that you can do something that's funny, and then if you continue doing it, it stops being funny, but then if you continue doing it after that, it starts being funny again. And that's what works with this hand, where he constantly touches people's faces with it, swipes away their hair with it. There's this big scene where they're going for having this fancy dinner, and he says that everything he prepared by hand, and he keeps putting his hand into all pieces of food, and it's not funny when I describe it, but if you try and find a clip of these hand jokes all put together, maybe there's a compilation. That's honestly the funniest part of this movie, all these hand-related jokes. I think those are the positives I can say about the movie. There are the Exorcist scene, a few other jokes, and then everything surrounding this hand thing is quite funny. So just to mention a few of the negatives about this movie. Again, there are a lot of weed jokes, and it's really, really bad. All this weed humor is really bad. There are a lot of racial or racist jokes that are not fun. This weed-smoking guy, what is his name? I think it's Marlon Wayans. He is honestly the worst character. In the first two movies, he's absolutely terrible. I really don't like that guy. He is the worst there is. And all his jokes are about weed, with one exception, where he's trying to teach the female lead how to be black. And that's not funny. And it's not because it's racist or something like that, at least not for me. It's just because it's genuinely not funny from any perceivable angle. There's also this parrot that's in a lot of scenes, and it's supposed to be funny that this parrot is swearing, and that this parrot is doing all these gags, and it's just not funny. It's terrible. It's really... Honestly, most jokes in this one are bad, and I really hated the last half of it. There's this whole Charlie's Angels sequence that is just bad. So many sex jokes, so many, oh, look at boobs jokes. It's really full of bad jokes. And I think also one of those that really don't work, I said that it also commented on some ads. There was some, I think, Nike ads back then, and it has I think, honestly, it's at least 1 or 2 minutes long where they just keep parodying that ad, and it's not funny. So yeah, it's really not good. It's really not good. It's not terrible because the opening has so many funny things going on. No, has enough funny things going on, I would say. So the first third of it, maybe the first half, have enough gags for maybe you to enjoy it. The second half is so weak that I really can't recommend you to see the whole film. You can maybe see the scenes I emphasized. If you like those scenes, you can see the rest. It's your time. I'm not going to try and decide what you should spend your life on. I can only give you my recommendations. And this one is not one of them. So Scary Movie 3 from 2003. This one parodies Signs, The Ring, 8 Mile, Sixth Sense, Matrix, and the others. At least those are were the ones I picked up on. I want to mention that this was probably my favorite of the Scary movies when I was a kid. I watched this one a lot. And I will also say that actually, of all the movies I've seen and in this franchise, it probably had the most jokes that worked for me. The jokes were generally not as strong as the strongest jokes in the first and second movie, but it just had much more that worked for me. And I think a lot of it is down to Leslie Nielsen being in it. So quick plot summary. And this one is more convoluted than the other movies. There is this tape going around. So that's taken from The Ring, where if you watch it, you'll die in 7 days. Then there's also an alien invasion that's taken from Signs. And you have this lead character. You have one lead character that used to be a priest and is now lost his faith because he lost his wife, played by Charlie Sheen, taken from Signs. And then his younger brother wants to be a rapper, so that's taken from 8 Mile. And he's trying to fall in love with this girl, this woman who has a son, I think. Oh no, it's his sister. And that's the part that's mostly related to The Ring. And then you have Leslie Nielsen, who is just doing a lot of different gags as the president. And that's more or less the plot. So all these things they have to track down the girl and find out how to solve the Ring thing. They also have to find out what the aliens are and probably beat them. And you have this love, this romance between the two characters. And yeah. So what works about this movie? The opening is okay. It has some jokes about Pamela Anderson's sex tape, and Pamela Anderson is in the scene playing another character. So that's why that kind of works. It also has again, a lot of stupid jokes. Someone asking, "Are you okay?" to someone who lost their head. It has weird gag. I don't know why that's funny, but it just is to me, where this guy, the former preacher, talks to this policewoman saying that things are normal, that he should not be observing anything strange here. And that whole scene, her haps keep getting bigger and bigger every time that we cut to it. So at the end, she's barely able to get into her police car. It's a stupid joke, but it works for me. I don't know, I guess I just have a thing for things that are too large. I'm kind of like Burt Reynolds in that Saturday Night Live sketch, because there's also a scene where they eat a very large ice cream. Or from a very large ice cream ball. It's not a ball. I forgot what you call them. Top. Ice cream top, I think they're called. But yeah, I know it shouldn't be funny, but it is to me. There are jokes where they look at those weird photographs from The Ring, and she asks, "Oh, who's that?" "Oh, that's Ralph. He's right over there." And then that guy just looks weird, like old blurry. And they have this weird in the flashback with the wife dying. There's this nice joke where they keep using food metaphors to talk about the situation. And I think one of the more memorable jokes for me is there's a teleprompter scene where whatever they put on the teleprompter, the guy reads up, and that's also kind of hilarious. And there is another joke related to the TV station where they say, "Oh, if you watch this tape, you'll die after 7 days, and we will be airing it 24/7. I mean, that's just a funny idea that this tape is killing everybody, and this TV station decides to show it to everyone. And another one where the girl calls, and after the son, there are too many jokes for me to tell all of them. I think I'll just tell the most memorable ones. There's one that I did this thing all the time as a kid where there are three guys who have to fight the aliens. So they go out with shovels, and one of the guys says, "Let's do this thing." And then he reloads the shovel as if it's a shotgun, and a shell falls out. I did that for years as a kid, just grabbing things and doing the sound. This is just a trip down memory lane. This is a trip down memory lane because honestly, this is the first franchise I've done where I have a memory of it as a kid. All the other franchises I've done so far were quite new to me. And honestly, I just start feeling really weird about this, thinking about what a weird kid I was, or maybe just how weird kids are if I'm not alone in doing this. And honestly, that's just a lot of gags in this. This is not a bad movie. I would say, unlike the second one where it had a good opening and a terrible end, this one has a very mediocre and boring opening, and then on the second half or second third of the movie, it starts getting quite funny. That's where most of the jokes are. And then it has a very weak last 10 minutes or so. Unfortunately, it doesn't end well, but everything going up till the end is quite funny. But I haven't said what annoyed me about the movie yet. For example, it has quite a prolonged pillow fight. It has, again, a lot of boob jokes. I don't know, were boobs funny back then? Maybe to my childhood eyes and ears. But I don't think these movies were made for, I don't know, I guess, kids or young people, especially young guys in the age 10 to 25. And maybe this is just what Americans find funny. This is the time where American Pie and that sort of thing came out. I just don't think this is a very funny thing. I don't think boobs are funny anymore. Maybe it did back then, but that's just what a lot of these jokes are down to. There's also a lot of bad rapping in it that's not funny. Then you have George, who's playing the brother who wants to be a rapper. He's absolutely terrible. He's really, really bad in this movie. There's also a terrible child actor in it that's just called playing the kid Cody. And he's also ruining every scene he's in. And there are a lot of jokes about that kid always being hit by things. And there's so many slapstick comedy aspects to this film that's just not good. And honestly, there's so much of it that just frustrated me instead of making me entertained. And that's why at the very end, I can only say it's a very low recommendation for me, and that you could probably skip most of this and find just the best scenes. So maybe find some timestamps online or find some clips, some compilations, because most of this entire movie is not worth your time. It's really not that good, but there are aspects that still work very well. So, Scary Movie 4 from 2006. This film parodies The Saw, The Grudge, Brokeback Mountain, War of the Worlds, $1 Million Baby, and The Village. So, quick plot summary. Well, the main plot summary is actually just War of the Worlds. It's about this divorced father who has to take care of his two children as the aliens come knocking around, invading Earth and everything. And he has to make his way through the country to get back to and reunite with the mom to the children. And on his way, he meets people. There's a really weird subplot where this girl from the previous film has to go to the village from the village and do things there. I honestly didn't. I think I'm sorry about this, but this is so bad that everything revolving around that village, I think my mind disconnected. I really don't get what that part of the plot was. But yeah, that's the main thing, that they have to find a way to defeat these aliens and be reunited. That's what the movie is about. So again, let's talk about the jokes that worked. There are a few. Not many, but there are a few. So some of the jokes from Brokeback Mountain, this time it's Kevin Hart and this other African-American guy. Both of them are in the previous film as well. And they're not really that funny in this movie, but there is one scene where they're talking about a camping trip they took together, a fishing trip. And they are wearing cowboy outfits like Brokeback Mountain, and then they're in the tent, lying next to each other. And one guy reaches down towards the other guy's crotch. And the guy says, "Hey, what are you doing?" And the guy says, "Hey, relax, I just want to grab some nuts." And he pulls up a bag of nuts. And I do remember this is one of those jokes that, again, was funny when I watched this. I was already almost getting too old when this movie came out to find this funny. But this is a joke that I would mimic with my friends. It is a joke I remember seeing other people mimic. I think even other TV shows and movies took the joke, this joke, and remade it. So that's one of the jokes that work. It had that was this one joke that made me laugh out loud, and that is taken from $1 Million Baby. So if you haven't watched $1 Million Baby yet, skip 1 minute ahead. So in $1 Million Baby, at one point the lead character falls and hits her neck, breaks her neck against this chair, so she becomes numb in her entire body. And in this one, instead of her falling and hitting, it's everybody else in that scene fall and or are hit by something and have their neck break. And it's just one of those scenes that it's so over the top. It's, again, things done in excess. And it even falls back to that scene later. There are flashbacks to that scene later where you see even more people have their necks broken. And I don't know, it's just funny to me. That was funny. And on top of all that, you have Mike Tyson just building a pile of ears he has bitten off during that entire fight. I don't know, that's something about that scene I liked. I'm not gonna lie, if you can find the scene online, that was hilarious to me. If you don't like that, if you watch that and don't like it, I guess we just don't share the same sense of humor, at least not in all aspects, and that's fine as well. There's also one scene with Leslie Nielsen. He's again playing the president, and he keeps saying things. This is after the aliens invaded and most people are already dead, and he keeps saying terrible things to these children he's trying to calm down, and every time he says something terrible to them, they react by spewing milk all over the place. And it's one of those, again, done to excess, where even at one point you just see him saying things and you just hear the sound of them just spewing milk everywhere in the background. That worked as well for me. Those are the two best ones, I think. There's another joke that kind of made me laugh, where this guy puts a gun down, first down the back and shoots himself in the ass, and then down in the front and shoots himself in the dick. And that is one of those things. I think the reason why I found it funny is because whenever I watch movies where someone is packing heat in the back or in the front, I'm always worried they're going to shoot themselves there. And so this movie doing it, yeah, that kind of worked for me. Not a lot, but then still more than you might have hoped for going into this movie, at least more than I had hoped for going into this. So again, most of the criticisms are the same. There's not as many boob jokes in this one, but there are some. There are also a few homosexual jokes in it, or homosexuality jokes in it. Not as many as in the other ones. There are a lot of jokes about people talking back and forth, misunderstanding each other, trying to find the logic in things. A lot of violence gags. These things don't work for me. A lot of jokes about sexy blondes as well. And there's this scene with Dr. Phil in the intro where they're doing Saw, and that's also really, really bad. I actually didn't look it up if it actually is Dr. Phil or someone pretending to be Dr. Phil, but that is really, really bad. So bottom line, this movie is just mostly very boring, and I cannot see why you would want to watch this. It's not the worst thing I've seen, it's just not good. And just as you thought we would not get any more scary movies, they went ahead and made a fifth one in 2013. That's 7 years after they made the fourth one. This movie is spoofing Paranormal Activity, Planet of the Apes, Black Swan, Inception, Evil Dead, and Mama. At least those are the movies I could recognize in the film. And I will start out by saying that this movie is utterly terrible. I hated this movie. It broke me. It was really, really difficult to keep my eyes fixed on the screen. It's really bad. All the jokes are bad. Almost all the jokes are bad. So let me start off with the plot summary. The opening gag is based on Paranormal Activity, where Martin Sheen and Carmen Electra are in this haunted house. And that's the same haunted houses will be used later in the plot. But then we shift to two weed smokers who discover these feral kids in a cabin in the woods. They are saved, brought back to not their parents because they no longer live, but their uncle and aunt, who are then taking care of them, and they're given this haunted house by the authorities to raise the children in. It's not really established why they had to live in this house. And that's pretty much it. They have to watch out for these children in a haunted house, while the ghost of the mother, is still living in the house and is talking to them and trying to make them do all these weird things. And that's the main plot, actually. They're trying then to exorcise the demons. So that's it. They have the demons in the house, they're trying to exorcise them. So jokes that work. The opening with Martin Sheen and Carmen Electra has a few nice jokes in it. It's mostly terrible, but they are talking about doing this sex tape and that it's not something that Charlie Sheen's character is usually doing with women. But at the same time, he has an entire wall covered with sex tapes. And also he has a setup of maybe 30 cameras fixated on the bed and other places in the room. And honestly, that was just so over the top that I liked it. Then you have the two stoners. I already talked about how I don't like weed comedy or stoner comedy. In general, there are some exceptions. Cheech and Chong are generally amazing. So it's just how it was done at this time. That the weed smoking movies that came out around this time were generally not that good. But there is a joke where the two weed smokers try to go to this farm, to this weed farm illegal, run by organized crime, to steal weed, and saying, "Oh, we were just going to steal enough for one blunt." And then it cuts to the next scene where they are carrying this joint that is, 3-4 meters long. And it's just so stupid that I kind of liked it. Again, it's just, I'm starved for comedy in this movie, so that was okay. There's also a joke that really shouldn't work, but I thought it was, again, done to excess. So it was funny where this guy keeps saying, "It's like that movie about a cabin in the woods." And the other guy says, the other guy played by Snoop Dogg, by the way, "You mean," and then he mentions a movie with a cabin in the woods. And he says, "No, the one with the cabin in the woods." And he keeps mentioning movies with cabins in the woods. So that's funny. It's funnier than most things in this movie. Also, they're spoofing Paranormal Activity, and they're doing it by having these jokes where everybody is filming. Even the nanny is walking around filming. And it's just done as if it's the most natural thing in the house. And that was okay. It was a funny idea. It's not something that made me laugh or even smirk, but it was just a funny idea. It has a scene that is mostly terrible about lesbian sex, where they do use all these stereotypical euphemisms. For example, you see a model train going into a tunnel, but because it's lesbian, they took all these stereotypes and turned them lesbian. So in this one, for example, the one that made me laugh, most of these things didn't work, but the one that made me laugh was, instead of a train going into a tunnel, it's a tunnel going into a tunnel, or slamming against a tunnel. And that was just so stupid that I kind of liked it. But yeah, that's mostly it. Most of it is terrible. So let me talk about what's terrible. Well, so many bad sex jokes in this one. So many bad sex jokes. There's more than one sex toy joke in it. There are at least 3 long... it's at least 4 long jokes about sex toys. There are a lot of bad toilet jokes. There are fat-shaming jokes. There are jokes about penis, where it's just supposed to be funny that it's a penis. There are a lot of jokes about smart apes because it's parodying Planet of the Apes and it's just not funny. A lot of bad shit jokes. Everything involving the Black Swan plot, so everything where they are dancing ballet, all of those jokes are bad. They are they are worse than I can pronounce the word astonishingly. They're worse than that. That's how bad they are. They're worse than my English pronunciation. But worst of all are the children. So the 4th movie had terrible child actors. The 3rd one has terrible child actor who always ruin the scenes they're in. This one, they ruin all the scenes they're in. And the problem is that they are almost in every single scene. These children are god awful. They act terribly, especially one of the children, the youngest one. No, the youngest one is a baby, so the second youngest one is such a bad actress that I got mad watching her. Maybe these movies are getting to me too much. Maybe I should try and distance myself, but I got angry watching this movie because they're so bad. I should also note it's not just the children. Simon Rex is such a terrible actor. He's also the one who plays the brother, the rapping brother in the third one. He's such a terrible actor, or at least he's so terrible in these movies, that he also ruined every single scene he's in. And given that he has the leading role, or one of the leading roles, and that the only other leading actor in this one, aside from the children, is the female lead, 75% of the acting in this movie is below abysmal. It is the worst of the worst. And that's why I will say that this movie broke me more than any other movie in the franchise. This is absolute garbage. This is the worst of the worst. I'm afraid I might actually be so angry that my neighbors are entertained by my comments right now. Just need to keep it more quiet, I guess. Because this is bad. This is really bad. This is... Ugh. So, I guess it's time to wrap up. Scary Movie franchise is a very different franchise than most horror movie franchises, given that it's a spoof franchise. Even more of a spoof franchise than the Scream movies, as the Scream movies actually had a chronological story that they were tied together, that they did develop their own plot, whereas this is just spoofing all the plots there are without really adding anything new to it. And they are very difficult to review for that reason. That's why I just ended up reviewing the jokes, because that's what they are. They have no plot, so all they are jokes and gags. So are those funny? I would say no. The first movie has decent jokes and gags. There are so many better comedies at that time, but I think if you do like horror spoofs, it's an okay watch. You will probably not be laughing your ass off, but it's actually doing a decent job. So it's a very low recommendation from me. The second movie, there are a few scenes you should watch, like the hand scene I talked about, or the Exorcist opening, but the rest of the movie is garbage. So I can only recommend the good parts. So watch those, don't watch the entire movie. The third one has a bad first half, but then kind of gets funny. So you can either watch the whole thing or try and find the funny scenes I mentioned. This one is more difficult to find the funny scenes because they're more scattered around the movie. Not as concentrated as they are in the second movie, but it might still be possible. So I can give those scenes a low recommendation. The fourth movie is mostly hot garbage. Not the worst of the worst, just not good, not funny, it's just boring. I think that's the problem with it, it's just so damn boring, the fourth one. The fifth movie is so damn awful that I hated every single second of it. It's really the worst. It's no recommendation, just stay away from it, burn it. If you ever see a copy of it, maybe buy it and burn it, and then so we have one less copy of it in this world. It shouldn't exist. It's really bad. And one good thing I can say about all of them are below 90 minutes. All of them are short movies. This might not mean a lot to you, but think of me. I have to watch all these movies. No, I don't have to. I decided to watch all these movies so I can tell you about them. Having 5 movies that are less than 90 minutes, that's a blessing in disguise. Well, no, it's just an outright blessing. Compared to the Scream franchise, where I think at least 3 of the movies are 2 hours long, and I hated them being so long, they were not worth it. This is good. Below 90 minutes is good for this purpose. And I think I'll end it here. I don't know if you got any enjoyment out of this review. I realize it's a very weird franchise review, but maybe weird can be not bad. If you're interested in seeing what I wrote about these movies after watching them, my written reviews, you can check out my profile at Letterboxd. The Robot Quits. You can find a link in the description. And I think that's what I have to say. So yeah, take care.